and welcome back to Pinstripe Pulse. We got a fun holiday episode planned for you guys today. Jrey is back. We're going to pick the best Yankees teams from this century. Let's hit it. Hello and welcome back to Pinstripe Pulse. We've got a little bit of a pivot from the previous offseason content we've been giving you. My name is Liam. I'm joined by Jake and Jrey. How you guys doing?
What's up, fellas? What's up, fellas? I'm feeling good. The Knicks are winning, so I'm feeling even better.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they are. They're beating up on the Bulls. I think this would be six straight if we get the win tonight.
Randall's catching a little bit of a blaze right now.
Listen, man, it feels good to be a Knicks fan right now. Nobody can make fun of me. At least for this last six
For
games.
the first time in our lives.
I love it. And Jake, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty well. Heading out to Europe tomorrow for Barcelona for a week. And then from there, I'm going to Brussels, and I'll be in Brussels for Christmas. And then from there, I'm going to Paris and then London. So I'll be back in about 3.5 weeks, but it's going to be a fun little expedition.
So if you tune into our last episode, that was released around the time that Jake was going, but right now he should be in Belgium somewhere. So any of our Belgian fans listening, try to run into Jake over there.
Yeah, find a good waffle spot or something. Town.
All right, so this is pre-recorded probably by about a week or two. So everyone say your outlandish Yankees predictions, and I'm only gonna cut in the worst ones. All right, ready? Yankees trade for Tatis. All right, Jake, your turn.
10-year extension for Donaldson.
10-year extension. Tyler Wade, franchise shortstop for the Yankees next year.
Tyler Wade number retirements are funny.
Tyler Wade all day.
So we're trying to predict the future, but now we're going to go into a bit of nostalgia. So full disclosure, we're a bunch of young guys in our 20s. And the Yankees are perennial winners, but we've seen a good amount of successful baseball, but maybe not World Series baseball. We're going to draft our favorite Yankees teams from this century. So from the year 2000 onwards, which includes 2 World Series titles, 4 trips to the World Series, a lot of ALCS losses, which I was counting up as I made the sheet.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jrey, how old were you on January 1st, 2000?
Was I 2 years old? Yeah, 2 years old.
Jake, how about you?
Young ass looking ass. I was actually 6 years old, so I remember that. I was at also the 96 ticker tape parade. So from the age of 2, I was just like Jrey, kind of born into excellence. And then was set up for a lot of disappointment moving forward. But yeah, no, I definitely remember that shit. First grade, baby.
Yeah, I was like 15 months old, just about. So clear memory of that Subway Series. Yeah, I'd say I don't remember all of these teams, but we were deep into the weeds of Yankees fandom, so I know a lot of Yankees classics games that we've watched and the Yankeeographies and everything. So we're pretty familiar with a lot of these teams, and then some of them we're a little bit too familiar with in more recent memory. So we'll go through, but we're just going to pick our favorites for today. So the biggest thing I'm going to get into, we got to pick the draft order because I think that's gonna be pivotal.
We're all fighting for 1 year.
So what I'm gonna do, let's do a random number generator. We're all gonna write a number from 1 to 25. No, 1 to 100. Let's do 1 to 100. All right, everyone write it down.
Fuck.
Or you can just put it on your phone. I trust you. Just don't change it.
All right, I got mine.
All right, I got mine.
Hold on 1 second. My notes section glitched. All right. What if we all have the same number?
All right. Everyone show your numbers to the screen. I got 32. Jrey's got 35. Tough. 28?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. All right. Well, I think I'm screwed no matter what. All
I
right.
mean, 28's an obvious Yankee one, you know?
What's a random number between 1 and 100? The random number was 1.
Oh, man,
So, Jake, you're the closest.
dude, I was so prepared to have a losing team.
All right, so you can get the first pick or you can choose whatever pick you want. Do you want the first pick? We're gonna snake it.
Yeah, I'll take the first pick. I want to win.
Okay.
Hold on, I need to like completely look at this roster again. All right, just because it's the most recent one, I'm going with the easy 2009 team. Just because, like, come on, you can't not. That's the year that they brought in CC, right? And then bring in AJ Burnett and
Tex.
yeah, Mark Teixeira comes in, and then you get
Swish.
Swisher was in there. Man, this is a good lineup. Hideki Matsui and DH role, 28 homers, 90 RBIs. Oh, there's just so much balance. You got, you don't have, whoa. Can we just get this team back, man?
I know, man. Dude, the balance in that lineup is
Johnny
something
Damon,
I
dude?
crave, man. I crave for that balance to be in the Yankees lineup today. We had what? Tex switch hitter, Melky Cabrera switch hitter, Nick
Mhm.
Swisher switch hitter, left-handed hitter and Robbie Cano, Matsui. It was just insane, man. We had an answer for every single pitcher that was thrown at us. And I think Jeter was batting what 330 that year too.
Yeah,
Jeter was incredible that year.
334.
I think he finished third in MVP that year.
Dude, how just like satisfying is this? Robbie Cano and Jeter both had 871 OPSs on the dot.
Both
And that
over
wasn't even
200
like
hits, I
top
think.
OPS.
Robbie Cano routinely hit 6th to 7th, sometimes 8th.
At 26 years old.
And then the next 3 seasons he would have MVP type seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was
You can argue that his 09 season was MVP worthy too. I mean, I think he had over 200 hits that year as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he was
he
at
did 204.
25 homers, 85 bombs, 320 average, 871. That is so good, man. And then A-Rod, just we didn't even really fully mention him, but 30 homers, 100 RBIs, 933 OPS. This is the type of stuff that a baseball card collector's head like goes nuts about.
Mhm.
These were the types of cards that I love pulling out of, a packet back in 09, 010, or in 2010, and seeing just like this team is motherfucking stacked right now.
What's your favorite memory? Okay, outside of the World Series, obviously.
Yeah.
What moment in 2009 did you guys think, yo, that we have a special group here?
I'll jump on it because I was just about to
Yeah,
say
go
it.
ahead.
In May, they had a 4-game series with the Minnesota Twins, and they had 3 walk-off wins.
Walk-off weekend, I remember that.
I distinctly remember, I know Damon had at least one. I think Damon had 2. I think he had a walk-off homer and a single. And I think
Yeah.
Jeter might have had one too. When that gave me honestly like the closest thing I felt to that again was this year, was 2022. Like that's where we were at. Like when Judge hit the walk-off homer, I mean, I was like Jake, we were at the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously I was feeling out of my head and stuff, but I remember like as a young kid, like playing baseball with my friends, like having friends who were Mets fans and stuff. Like the Yankees didn't make the playoffs the previous year, and they were like rolling. Like they were always on that 105, 103 win pace. I think they ended up with. And that weekend, I mean, we always beat up on the Twins, but that was a special weekend because like every game, like it just felt like we couldn't lose. Like there were comeback wins, there were gritty like neck and neck wins, but they were blowout wins. Like every game it felt like it was gonna end with with the pie in the face that AJ Burnett was doing, and that became electric. Like as early as that, I was so onto this team.
This team was just full of alphas. Like if you look like top to bottom, and then if you look at the rotation as well, it's CC Sabathia, AJ Burnett, who's just the ultimate intimidator. Andy Pettit had he didn't even have like that great of a season for his standards, but like low 4 ERA, and then Jabba Chamberlain coming in there. All those guys are bulldogs, and then on top of that, you have Mariano at his prime, just closing games left and right.
Phil Hughes coming out of the pen. What a big weapon he was.
Remember Phil Koch?
Phil Coke.
And then David Robertson at 24 years old, and now he's getting 10 million from the Mets. That's crazy.
I think the moment for me that really, well, you could go with so many moments. Liam, you mentioned all the walk-offs that happened. You didn't mention the famous "he dropped the ball, he dropped the ball."
Oh my
Luis
God.
Castillo in that game. I'll never forget that one. But the moment for me that really had me thinking, "Yo, this Yankee team is gonna win this year," was May 8th. 2009, Jrey, the Yankees were still struggling out of the gate. Remember, Teixeira had that horrible April. Oh, he had always had horrible Aprils anyway. But that day, A-Rod stepped in the box. I believe it was his first at bat, hits a bomb. And from that moment, it just felt like, okay, now we're rolling. This team is going to steamroll through the AL. And that, in fact, they did. I even remember that year, we couldn't beat the Red Sox for like, I think the whole first half of the season. It felt like I think the first 8 games we were about 0-8. I could be exaggerating, but I know it was very bad. And then the Red Sox just couldn't beat us throughout the whole second half of the season. We just tore them apart. That was easily the greatest Yankee team that I've ever seen from top to bottom.
That was one of the greatest baseball teams I've ever seen.
Mm.
In terms of complete teams, like our playoff plan felt like it was flawless. Like the 3-man rotation, CC, Burnett, Pettit. Like we went 3 games with Minnesota because we've never lost to the Twins. We rolled 6 with Anaheim and 6 with the Phillies, and it was the same 3 guys we went through. And when we talk about a deep bullpen, like Jabba Chamberlain coming out of the pen, Phil Hughes being awesome in the playoffs, and Alex Rodriguez, having a down season for A-Rod, just casual, 30 homer, 100 RBI still, and finally performing, being our best player in the playoffs, like getting that monkey off his back that he had for all those years before. They were as complete of a team as I can remember seeing in all of baseball, and that's definitely a biased take, but it's up there.
Absolutely.
I knew it was over once they got CC, honestly. Once they inked him to that deal, I was like, this dude's coming off of the best season of his career, and he's still in his prime, and he's only going to get better. Like what he did with Milwaukee in 2008 for that second half of the season, like 1.5 ERA, just striking out people left and right, throwing 97, 96 just casually. That's as good as it gets in recent memory, like easily.
Yeah. You know what's funny about you mentioned CC? I used to hate CC Sabathia when he was on Cleveland, and there was one reason, because as a kid, you thought all of your players deserved all the awards. I didn't know any better. Yo, back in 07, I was like, yo, if Chien-Ming Wan does not win Cy Young, I'm gonna be furious. All I looked at was wins. That's all I looked at back when I was a kid.
I was about to say every advanced stat means CC wins that year. Yeah. That was one of the best pitching seasons in recent history.
Dude, he was a monster. But I was looking at the wins. I'm like, yo, Chien-Ming Wan won like 18, 19 games in 2007. I was like, he's a shoo-in for Cy Young. And when I found out the news that he wasn't, I was heartbroken. I couldn't stand CC until he put on pinstripes, man.
Man was dead to you.
Rob, my boy, man.
Chien-Ming Wan, man. What a Yankees legend.
He was on that 2009 roster. He was supposed to be our number 3 starter. In fact, I believe he started the season as our number 2.
Was that the year that he got hurt running the bases?
He got hurt in 2008.
Okay, gotcha.
In Houston, and then in 2009, he just wasn't the same. I remember that first week, CC started game 1 in Baltimore. The second game was Chien-Ming Wan, and I believe he got rocked. And then AJ Burnett game 3, and Chien-Ming Wan wasn't the same after that year. So
that injury ruined him. It's a shame too, because he had like one of the best starts to a career for a starting pitcher that I've seen.
In 2009, he went 1-6 with a 9.64 ERA. That's tough. He had a great career. I'll jump into pick number 2, but first I'm gonna read off the home run numbers from this lineup. 7 guys hit 20 home runs. The other guys, Derek Jeter, who hit 330, and Melky Cabrera, who who platooned, and he still hit 13, which is as our 9 hitter. Posada 22, Tex 39, Robbie 25, Jeter 18, A-Rod 30, Damon 24, Swisher 29, Matsui 28. Nuts.
Swisher hit 29.
29.
Wow.
And Posada had an 881 OPS, 885.
Yeah.
As a catcher.
Jesus. That team was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Everyone had a 120 plus OPS plus.
Were you guys afraid of the Phillies before we move on?
I was afraid of their starting rotation.
Yeah, I was afraid of Cliff.
I was too.
Yeah.
And Cole Hamels.
Cole Hamels and fucking the Doc, of course.
And then Pedro had nightmares from too, just because the Pedro had owned the Yankees for a while.
I wasn't worried about Pedro. I had a feeling we were gonna rock him. I was just worried. Cliff Lee scared me because I just dreamed of him being in pinstripes and it never happened.
And it came to fruition in game 1. They got us in game 1. Cliff Lee beat CC. You know, CC didn't do wrong that game, but Cliff Lee just
did everything right. Yeah.
He was an unbelievable pitcher in his prime too.
Yeah.
Now, what's pick number 2?
Pick number 2, it's a bit of an awkward pick for me, but as a Yankees fan, I think I have to take it because I have no memory of following the season live, but I'm going to go with our other World Series championship, which is the year 2000, the Subway Series versus the Mets. And I feel a little weird doing it too, because in terms of win-loss record, it's one of our worst seasons in the past 20 years, regular season performance. The Yankees went 87-74 in 2000. But what I think makes it so great, and it's still a really well-remembered Yankees team, is that it's so hard to repeat as a champion in baseball. And the last team that did it was this 2000 team, and that it was a three-peat. Like they had one of the best teams ever in 98, a classic, solid, start to finish winning team in 99. And in 2000, they struggled. And you could see, okay, I think the Yankees are going to fall off. And they came into a resurgent Mets team that were probably maybe didn't have more talent, but performed better in the regular season. Were coming up. They had been knocking on the door of the Braves in the East and like trying to take that spotlight from the Yankees in New York. And it was just inevitable. Like a 5-game series. And we didn't put them away. It was close wins. And I think in 2000, it was really a testament to just how ingrained winning was into this team, into the organization at the time. Because it just seemed like once you get to the end in 2000, you look back at the 2000 season and you're like, of course the Yankees were going to win it. But if you follow along from that season, there were so many struggles. It proved, I think, Joe Torre's expertise with the team as a manager. It developed Derek Jeter. Not that it developed, but it kind of proved his leadership. And they were just a deep, deep team. The end of that three-peat. That three-peat's really special. That's the last time a team has repeated. And I can't tell you the next time a team's going to three-peat in baseball, especially modern baseball. So I think that's a really special feat for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the players that sticks out to me from the 2000 season, and obviously from the Yankees dynasty period, and he doesn't get enough respect, is number 51, Bernie Williams. That dude was an absolute juggernaut. I mean, he played in obviously the steroid era, and if you compare numbers to some of those big center fielders at the time, like a Ken Griffey Jr., maybe his numbers don't match up. But Bernie was, I'd say, a top 5 center fielder in baseball at that time, and not enough people put respect on his name back then.
At a 307 average, 391 OBP, 957 OPS. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have David Justice off the bench too, hitting a sneaky 305, 977 OPS, 391 on base percentage. So you had guys firing from different cylinders and a lot of just role players who really knew how to contribute. It's an impressive roster. And there's something very satisfying about looking at Paul O'Neill's 18 homers and 100 RBIs. I don't know why I like that so much, but it's a fun one.
Bernie was dominant, man. He had a 140 OPS plus that year. Jorge Posada had a 139. And you know, Bernie's name has come up recently in Yankee circles because Bernie apparently was a few inches away from signing with the Red Sox when he hit free agency. And that was a classic George Steinbrenner. How much are they giving you? I'll give you a little bit more. Like, do you want to stay? And take him back. But you know, Bernie, I think, is an unfortunate unsung hero of this dominant era of Yankees baseball, just because his timeline was a little bit earlier than, you know, Posada, Jeter, you know, who came up and got to through 2009, and also because he ended at a tough time when the Yankees were struggling. You know, his last season was 06, and the Yankees hadn't won since this 2000 World Series, in which he was by far the best player and one of the best players in baseball, even in the steroid era. But yeah, put some respect on Bernie's name.
Absolutely. This is the weirdest fucking parallel that I just found. I'm going to read off these numbers and tell me who you think of from this current Yankees team when you hear them. 16 homers, 64 ribbies, 230 batting average, 299 OBP, 374 slugging, 673 OPS, which was easily like the worst of any starter from like this team.
Like Donaldson or Glaber.
Yeah.
Josh Donaldson, guess which player was Scott Brosius, third baseman. They had nearly identical seasons. That's fucking insane.
That's crazy.
That just caught my eye so much.
Chuck
Social
Knobloch.
media, social media makes things so much worse because I guarantee you Scott Brosius wasn't getting it nearly as bad as Josh Donaldson does from us.
Oh, probably didn't call Tim Anderson Jackie too.
Oh, that's true.
Might have something to do with it.
Except the only thing back then is if you just pissed off a journalist or two, that was your entire narrative.
Yeah.
It was like 4 writers in the different papers and stuff. Team at David Justice, Jose Canseco, legend Jose Vizcaíno. A lot of legends in this team. El Duque, David Cohn, Clemens, Doc Gooden.
Soriano made his appearance.
Yep. All right, I think that's good for pick number 2. All of our World Series out the door. So Jrey, time to get creative.
All right. I think this one is a easy one. If we didn't win a World Series in any of those seasons, I think this was the year you guys would have picked. We're young, so probably the most exciting Yankee team outside of 2009 for us has to be 2017. It was a year nobody expected us to go out there and make some noise, but you're damn right we did make some noise. Aaron Judge's breakout campaign, his rookie season, which he should have had an MVP to go along with it, but no sour grapes there. Aaron Judge should have had an MVP. Didi Gregorius was doing his thing. That was the year of Matt Holliday at DH. Had a fantastic first half of the season, but that was the first year where the baby bombers were legit, and we thought this was going to be something for years to come. Gary Sanchez, wow, what a fall from grace! But in 2017, that guy was murdering baseballs, and probably you would put him. I would say he was the best catcher in baseball when he was playing like that. What else can we point out? I think Masahiro Tanaka, his outstanding playoff performances, man. He was just ice cold against Cleveland, ice cold against the Astros. I feel like that was the most hopeful I felt in a long time about a Yankee team from, I'd say, 2010. After 2010, things just started to go downhill. And 2017 was exactly the spark the franchise needed to say, yeah, we can go all in and we can compete for a World Series every year. But yeah, I remember that year so fondly. Could go back to games like when we were playing in Wrigley and Brett Gardner hit the bomb in the 9th inning. I don't know if it was a grand slam, but he had a home run to give us the lead late in the game. There was just so much excitement. Matt Holliday down big against Baltimore, and we start climbing back. And then I don't even remember what the score was, but Matt Holliday hitting a walk-off home run into the Yankee bullpen. That was just so much fun. And we made the trades in the middle of the year. David Robertson coming back home to us, Todd Frazier coming in. it was just such a fun group, easy to root for. And we can't say this much about Yankee teams, but that was a year we were playing with house money. There was nothing to lose, man. Just go out there and play ball. And I think that was the most exciting thing about it. I miss that team. And I feel like all of us have been searching for that since that year.
I feel like the chemistry of that team was just as good as it gets in terms of guys that genuinely liked being around each other. I remember they would do whenever they would hit a home run in a game, they would do the thing where they had like the pseudo like interview. Remember that?
Hmm.
Where they would have like the Gatorade topper and like it would just be like Starlin Castro and all those young guys messing around. Didi was on it too. And man, that was a good year for him. He had that huge homer against the Twins in that wild card. Was it the wild card game? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the Twins and
All timer.
just great clutch aspects all around. And then if you look at the rotation, this might be sneaky one of the best rotations the Yankees have ever pumped out. Because you got Severino, 14-6, 2.98 ERA. Tanaka, even though he didn't have that great of an ERA or anything like that, he was still so clutch in the playoffs that you don't even think about that part.
Mm-hmm.
Montgomery came up and was 9-7, 3.88. Sabathia 14-5, 3.69. Pineda was in there with an 8-4, 4.39, and then you top it out with Sonny Gray, who obviously got booed out of the Bronx, but 4-7, 3.72 ERA. They just had a lot of guys that like meshed well together, and they just knew how to pitch. And you had, prime Dellin Betances, Chad Green, Chapman, Adam Warren. Even though I'm not a huge Adam Warren fan, but still,
Jonathan Holder too.
Yeah,
He was solid down the stretch.
Tyler Clippard. Ugh.
I forgot he came along with that trade.
Yeah, man. But no, they had a lot of good arms and just guys that were dogs and ready to go. And they did give the Astros a serious run for their money despite all the cheating.
Yeah. I mean, we took them to 7, man.
Mm-hmm.
Took them to 7.
This team revitalized my love for the Yankees. And the Yankees are always like my number one team, and it's a general priority in life, it seems at this point. But in when the Yankees had those downtrodden years, missing the playoffs in 13, 14, and 16, and in 2015 they just scratched into the wild card and never had a chance against Dallas Keuchel. That was clear through my high school years, and that was when I was playing baseball at my highest level. And I was honestly kind of apathetic towards them. They weren't playing well. They didn't have good expectations. There wasn't a lot of prospects. And in 2017, honestly, it was the same thing, but right off the bat, there was something different about this team. They were a year ahead of schedule. Judge put up an all-time season from a rookie, and we're like, wow, like the prospects that we've had and have been fostering are actually doing well. Gary Sanchez, such a sneaky, dominant 2017. He only played 122 games. The proportion of home runs to at bats, I just did the math. Judge had a home run every 13.2 at bats. Gary Sanchez had a home run every 15.8 at bats.
It's nuts.
And Judge hit 20 more just because he played more games. Gary Sanchez was on a different level. That team was so fun. That was one of the more fun summers I've had because we didn't have expectations. The Yankees, we talk about it all the time. Our expectations are World Series every year. It wasn't that year, and it wasn't for a few years in those mid 2010s. And 2017 was supposed to be a development year, establish some guys, Montgomery, Judge, Sanchez, Severino. These were guys that were coming up to help us compete, at that window, maybe 2019 on. And then 2017 put it, oh shit, this team can win now. And we went toe to toe, lost by a run, lost all 4 games in Houston to a confirmed cheating team. Not that the Yankees would have won the World Series if it weren't for the Astros. I think the Astros, if they weren't cheating, should have still beaten this Yankees team. But it goes to prove how much heart this team had, that it literally took all the tides against them along this way to finally fall to Houston. And they had a lot of grit, and it was so much fun.
That 2017 team, that was the last time I cried over a Yankees loss. The last time I shed a tear was that game 7. I remember exactly where I was. I was took a little trip with my girlfriend. We were out in PA. We were watching the game, and I am so pumped. And about like the seventh inning, I'm just realizing, yeah, we're done. We're not even touching the. I think Lance McCullers threw us how many straight curveballs, and
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
couldn't touch it, dude. A tear came down my eye, and my girlfriend laughed, but she ended up having to console me and keep me cool that night because I didn't want to say a word. Didn't want to say a word. But no, I love that team. They'll always have a soft spot in my heart. I just wish that obviously this baby bombers era is now over. I wish we got a ring in that time frame. I wish Gary, Judge, and those young boys all got one together, but it's not the way the cookie crumbles.
I mean, we really just retained Judge and Sevy. Those are the two left.
Mhm.
So everyone else is gone, and they didn't quite pan out the way we wanted it to. So sucks, but
Man.
hopefully this new crop comes out and does better than ever.
We got Volpe, Dominguez, all those guys. Hopefully they rejuvenate this fan base.
Exactly. For my next pick, this one's gonna hurt a lot because I remember it very vividly because I was in 5th grade at the time. The 2004 Yankees team. Every Yankees fan knows about the story, and I wish I could forget it, but I can't because the players on this team were really goddamn good. And man, they were there 3-0, and they lose to the Red Sox in the CS 4 consecutive losses. That was painful because there was a girl in my class who we were up 3-1, and I was a little cocky SOB, and I was like, "We're the best in the world," blah blah blah. And then she comes out with like, "Oh, just watch, the Red Sox are going to win it all." And she would say it every day in science class, and I'd be like, "You got to shut up, got to stop talking that shit." And she never did because they fucking won, and then they won it all. But if you look at this roster, man, you've got Jorge Posada once again holding it down, 272 average, 881 OPS. He's so good. He was so good. Tony Clark was still on the team, which is crazy to think about. He feels like he's like 70 now. Miguel Cairo was a guy that I always enjoyed watching. I actually got to see him play in spring training in 03, I want to say. Derek Jeter, of course, 292. It was a downish season for him, but still 823 OPS. A-Rod kind of back to his form, 36 homers, 106 bombs. Hideki Matsui, 31 homers, 108 bombs, and just a great 912 OPS to round that out. Bernie, once again, still holding it down. Gary Sheffield is a fun one, 36 homers, 121 RBIs.
A monster.
At 35 years old, too.
OPS, 35 years old. I was so excited about that deal because they also got Randy Johnson. So there was just so many, like, you can kind of tell, like, veterans that were almost towards the end of their rope, but still hanging in there. That's kind of what the vibe that team gave off. So completely opposite of, like, 2017 for the most part. Or, yeah, just any of those teams, 2017, 2009. It was a different feel altogether just because they had a bunch of, like, former superstars playing together.
You want to talk about... Oh, sorry, go for it.
No, go ahead.
You want to talk about a narrative shift. When I have a neighbor across the street, she used to work for the Daily News, and she knew I was a big Yankees fan, and she would get me all like the special edition papers, especially down the stretch when the old stadium was closing. And 2004 was the first postseason that I remember somewhat watching. I was like 5 or 6, so it was still hazy. But I watched that ALCS, and that was devastating, devastatingly painful. I got a photo from her a few years later of Alex Rodriguez hitting a 3rd or 4th inning home run in Game 4 to put the Yankees up 2-0. And A-Rod had a really good first 3 games of that ALCS, and how different his narrative was for 5 years after, because that was his first season with the Yankees. A-Rod could have been a postseason hero if we win that game, and he did nothing wrong to lose that Game 4. But between us sweeping and us losing that game in 7, and credit to your friend or classmate, that delusional Red Sox mindset, that was something else back then. But they just had that blind, nothing to lose kind of belief that got them through. It's crazy to think how differently that that changes A-Rod's legacy, how much it bridges, the 4 and 5 World Series to the 09 World Series, and we really have this 20 years of almost like Tom Brady like dominance of this Yankees team with Jeter, with Bernie Williams. Maybe he gets more credit. What could have been? And everyone knew, they always talk about it, the winner of the ALCS won the World Series that year. They knew that's what they were playing for.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, whoever was in the NL had no shot against the juggernauts of what was the Red Sox and the Yankees back then. I mean, those Red Sox teams were stacked too. I always say Manny Ramirez is probably the smoothest has the smoothest right-handed swing I've ever seen in my life. I was terrified of that guy whenever he came to the plate. Now, for me, Liam, you said you remember that '04 year a little bit. I really don't remember it too much as a kid. The first Yankee team I fell in love with was back in '06. So the '04 team, while it doesn't bother me, looking back at it sometimes, but I've heard from so many Yankee fans that were around in their 20s back then say that was probably the darkest time as a Yankee fan after that loss in Game 7. It was just, it was dark. It was dark because the game was over. Game 7 was over before it really even started. So I could only imagine. I'm just happy that I wasn't, in the right frame of mind to remember that because my little ass would have been in pouring tears.
Oh, my cognition is completely screwed because of that. I mean, also if you look at the pitching real quick, it's just like their number one was Javier Vasquez. 14-10 with a 4.91 ERA. Like, just not, if they put out a remotely competitive pitching lineup, like this team probably wins that series 9 times out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
If they had Andy Pettitte there, I think they win that series.
I think Mike Messina was on that rotation too.
And it was their 3, but that was
he had a down year.
And
Messina was probably their operational one, but he didn't perform like it.
Yeah, their best pitcher was El Duque, and he had 15 games under his belt with a 3.3 ERA. So like he didn't even play a full season.
Yeah.
I think this gives insight to Jake's character, that this is his 4th overall pick, second over, at least his mindset about the Yankees, just the straight up worst heartbreak in Yankees history.
What a masochist.
And to his credit, they were a great team. They were an incredible team that deserved better. But they got beat.
They did.
All right. It's my turn?
No, it's my pick now.
Okay.
We'll snake it after the end of the second round. So
okay.
After your next pick, you'll take the second and go back.
Cool.
Oh, this is interesting for me. Where do I go from here? I think I have to go with 2019.
Stole my pick.
Yeah. And this is a real recent one. The 2019 Yankees. We talked about that 2017 opening up that window. This is where we were all in on winning. We got the wild card the year before. Like we won 100 games in 2018, but 2019 it was our year. It was the first division win in years. We hadn't won, I think, since the last time we made the post, maybe 2013 or 2012 even. And this was we had Stanton. We signed DJ that year, and DJ had an awesome first season for us. A casual 900 OPS, 136 OPS plus. Judge had a somewhat down year with injury, still had 27 bombs and came back for the playoffs in time. Gary was still kind of good. He was still very good, honestly. Mike Talkman, the legend, was our left fielder throughout the year. Gio Urshela came up after the Andujar injury, and he was a revelation. This was a really good team. We won the division, 103 games, had solid pitching from Tanaka, from Domingo Herman, from Paxton. It was the last season of CC. And ultimately, this comes down to that ALCS having one of my favorite moments in recent Yankees memory, and also my least favorite moment in recent Yankees memory. I was in college. I was at a formal during Game 6 of the ALCS. And in the 9th inning, me and all the sports fans are watching the top of the ninth as the Astros are up, and we see little old, or not so little, but lanky old DJ LeMahieu come up to the plate and just find that pesky right field porch and in Houston. I jumped up on top of the bar. Uh, I bought drinks for people. I was giving people hugs I had never spoken to. It was the best, like, holy shit moment of my Yankees life, I think. Because it was against the big bad man. It was against the Houston Astros, and we didn't even know about them cheating yet. And then the next inning, I was watching coming out of the bar, and I see, and I'm kind of glad I stopped watching. I see Chapman just hang a cement mixer. Altuve makes contact, and I just turn around and leave. And I didn't watch the end of that game, but that team, it felt like we were back to the Yankees. We won the division. We went pole to pole. We weren't really challenged that much. It was complete. We had injuries, like Judge, our best player, was down. Mike Talkman performed. Cam Maben, even Clint Frazier had a decent year. Gio came up, Luke Voigt. It felt like we were back to our ways, and the Astros just said, "Nope, this is our window."
That was a very fun team to watch. That was what DJ had an MVP like season that year. I mean, where did he finish in the MVP race? I believe it had to be in the top three, if I'm not mistaken.
Third, maybe.
I think he was third 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, had an insane season. And to think, I believe that was DJ's first year with the Yankees.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't have a role. Nobody knew what role he was going to play with this Yankee team. We just knew he was going to find playing time some way, somehow. He wasn't our starter. He wasn't even starting in game one of the season, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope.
So, a lot of surprises that year. You mentioned Gio. We came into that season with so many expectations from 2018, seeing Andujar and Glaber go crazy in their rookie years. I was super stoked to see what Andujar would do to build upon that rookie year, which he should have won Rookie of the Year in 2018, but whatever. Yeah, that was such a fun team to watch. And like you, I think what sucks about it is what stands out the most is just that one game. You just stare at that DJ home run. I remember where I was. I was sitting in my car. I was late getting home. I'm listening to John Sterling on the radio, and I'm like, yo, this shit is over. It's over. And then when DJ goes yard, I'm going crazy. I'm honking my horn on the street. Hurry up, shut my car off, run inside. And I think Aaron Judge was up next right after DJ, right after DJ hit that home run. And I was like, we're going back to back. We're going back to back. It's happening. And it doesn't. But, you end up going into the next inning with a little bit more confidence. But it's not even the Altuve home run that sticks with me. What hurts the most is what's imprinted in my mind is that Aroldis Chapman smile. That sticks with me. I can never get over it. And I'm happy he won't be a Yankee this year. But that's all I think about now when I see 2019. I think of that stupid ass smirk off of Aroldis Chapman's face. It just broke my heart that year, man. We should have had it. We should have had it.
Wake up angry every morning thinking about that. I gotta say, I loved this team, but at the same time, I was frustrated at the trade deadline because they had a prime opportunity to trade for Justin Verlander. And what do you know? He goes to the Astros right before.
That was 17.
Oh, was it shit?
Yeah,
I was in LA. I was actually watching the deadline kind of unravel. And it just felt like it was Zach Greinke. Sorry.
Yeah.
I should for Greinke.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just sitting there waiting for them to make a big move because I really wasn't confident in the starting pitching. Because you had Tanaka still as your number one. And like I trust him in the playoffs, obviously, but at the same time, like you have Hap at number two, it just didn't feel quite right. So there were moves that could have been made, and they just decided to hold on to Clint Frazier and Andujar, and Andujar was justified at that point, but at the same time, it's just kind of clear that they prospect hugged a little bit too hard.
Yeah, big time.
And that could have been a very different series had they had maybe slightly better pitching.
I mean, just the year before in 2018, I don't remember. I think it happened in the offseason where Houston traded for Garrett Cole. Obviously, the Yankees were always rumored to be in on Garrett Cole, but we were, like you said, we were hugging on to prospects. We weren't willing to get rid of a Clint Frazier or Andujar to get a guy like Cole. And now, granted, who knows if Cole would be the pitcher he is today without his time in Houston.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think we have a way better chance of beating Houston if we had Garrett Cole, even if he was in his Pittsburgh form, than what we had. Like you said, J.A. Happ. J.A. Happ was the one that gave up the bomb to Correa, and I think game 1 or game 2, out of the pen. So uh, we should have had, but that's always been my problem with Cashman, is we never get the big fish when it comes to pitching, and at the All-Star break, we need the pitching, and obviously that showed its ugly head. We need a reliable 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
I think this team also was kind of emblematic of the few years afterwards, where I think 2017 almost did damage to the decision-making process for the Yankees because they're like, oh, we can get cute. We can find these diamonds in the rough, but they weren't really diamonds. Like they were solid, really good MLB players, but we were getting a lot of guys at the peak of their upside. And I think that's where we were going away from being the Yankees because we were saving money, we were trying to be cute, and we had some of the high paying players. But I think now you realize that you pay more for consistency than anything and for a higher ceiling. Like I think you need to have both. You have to get cute with some of the players, but I think the Yankees, they could have gone Death Star in 2019, and that was their best team to win, and they chose not to because they wanted to develop with value in their farm.
They missed out on Harper and Machado. They didn't even really look at him. I mean, they looked at Machado, but like Harper wanted to be a Yankee, and they just said no, we're good. And I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, the DJ LeMahieu move was probably the most under the radar, best move you could possibly make. But they had Tulowitzki slotted in to start at shortstop at the beginning of the season. So there's just a lot of roster misalignment going on there that still to this day, the more I think about it, the more it frustrates me.
Yeah. We should have so many more championships, man. so many
inches, dude. It's brutal.
Yeah. All right, so for this pick, I'm gonna go with I mentioned them earlier. The first Yankee team that I ever fell in love with was back in 2006. That's where I really fell in love with baseball. I really started to play baseball and commit myself to it. With that team, Melky Cabrera's full-on rookie year. There was nothing too exciting about the team, but it was just what I loved. My favorite pitcher of all time, I found him through this team. It was Mike Mussina. When I first started pitching in high school, I used to go into my stretch, go down, and get ready to throw, just like Mike Mussina. I never mastered the knuckle curve, but that team was such a good squad. I think those mid-2000 Yankee teams, when you're watching from 05, 06, 07, all had World Series-like potential, but was just missing that ace in the rotation. I mean, look at the rotation. Outside of Chin-Ming Wong, you had Randy Johnson with a 5 ERA, Mussina with a 3.51, but then it gets ugly from here. Here's a blast from the past. Jarrett Wright with 11-7 with a 4.49. And then let's see if you guys remember this one. Sean Chacon. Yeah. Sean Chacon with a 7 ER. Now that was, man. Listen, the one thing that sticks out for me, so I mentioned Manny Ramirez earlier. I used to remember him vividly just abusing Scott Proctor every time, every single time that he stepped up to the plate. And I don't know what is it about this team. I don't know if it's just because I abused MLB 2K as a kid and I just kept like throwing Octavio Dotel in every chance that I had. But I was just in love with this 06 Yankee team that eventually got knocked out by young Verlander and Kenny Rogers and all those guys. Man, that was the Maglio Ordonez year, I believe, in 06. So,
yeah.
And we just ran into a buzzsaw with that squad. But the Yankees absolutely had, like I said, in those years, we had championship contending teams, but we just never had the number one, the number two, that 1-2 punch, like I mentioned earlier, to get the deal done. But
I was in a similar
hold near and dear, yeah.
Yeah, I was in a similar spot to you, Jrey. Like I said, like I remember 2004 pretty vaguely, but like '06 was like my first full throttle. I'm a fan. This is my
Yeah.
personality now, kind of thing. I used to in the basement of my house, we used to have like a big whiteboard. And 2006, I distinctly remember I used to write in the middle. I drew like a big Yankee symbol. I had who they were playing every day. I had the AL East standings. I had the wild card standings. I had the lineups. I used to do it every day. I used to erase on my finger, Yankees won, put a number up. Um, this was also the year they traded for my king, Bobby Abreu. He was like
I
Mm.
love
my
Bobby
my
Abreu.
favorite player.
Ew.
Yeah.
Ew.
Look at his stats when he got to the Yankees that year. I just had it right in front of me.
330 batting average, 926 OPS, 138 OPS plus.
Jesus Christ, man. He was a very good Yankee.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
An underrated Yankee.
And he had that crazy home run derby year that
Yeah, he
year
went off.
too.
Mhm.
Yeah, because he was with the Phillies, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the team. It was the same thing. Also, I was 7 years old, but I got a wart on my foot from the summer. It was really bad. It was really deep. And I remember it because I used to try and stay up and watch the playoff games, but especially with the 8 o'clock starts, I always had to go to sleep in like the fifth or sixth inning. So my mom we were treating it every day for like a month. And I'm waking up in the morning and I would like, if it got really painful, I would cry. And it was just like a bad day. We're up in the morning and I knew the Yankees were down in the series. And yeah, they lost in four. I know they were down in the series. And we're going through it, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to school. This hurts. And then I was like, I like half awake. I'm like, Mom, like, did the Yankees win? And she's like, No, they lost. And I just screamed. I lost it. Started wailing, crying. It's one of the more vivid, extreme memories of me crying that I can remember as a kid.
Oh my god.
That was my relationship with the '06 Yankees.
Oh
It's
six and
frustrating.
07, those ones hurt a lot. I remember Victor
That was
Martinez in '07 hitting a home run in the playoffs to seal the deal. Still hurts. But I'm gonna move on to my next pick. I'm gonna go with 2010, the Yankee team that I think all of us thought we were going back to back. I think we all thought that at one point we were going back to back. It's relatively the same team to what it was in '09 minus Matsui and Johnny Damon, but one of my favorite pickups that year was Lance Berkman.
Mm.
Never in my life did I envision him. You know, people put on pinstripes, and I told you guys this about Frankie Montas. He just didn't look like a Yankee to me. And I thought that about Lance Berkman, but he just fit in right away. I think he had a very good postseason too. It was probably our only decent bat when we were going up against Texas in October. And then here's a name for you guys. Let's see if you guys remember him from the squad. If I'm not mistaken, Kerry Wood was in the bullpen for us in 2010 and he looked amazing. He was, I think he was our setup man. He was coming out in the seventh or eighth inning back then, but he was dealing. He was still throwing gas, still looked good. It was just with that Texas team just overpowered us. That was the Josh Hamilton squad, Ian Kinsler and the boys. I don't know if I don't think Milton Bradley was still on that team in 2010. I could
That's
be, but that's yeah, but Nelson Cruz was there. We just got overpowered. But that was a fun Yankee team. That was when the Grandy Man came aboard hitting bombs. Marcus Timms had a good season at DH. They were a fun group, and like I said, I think we all just thought they were gonna win a championship again. And unfortunately, Colby Lewis and the Texas Rangers knocked us out.
oh
Colby
yeah. I
Lewis.
mean, Kerry Wood is still one of my favorite pitchers of all time. The career that could have been. Oh,
Mhm.
but I'm glad we got him in his little bullpen resurgence.
Yeah, check this out. He had a 0.69 ERA.
Surreal.
that team because like the 2009 Yankees went pole to pole. This is the best team ever, World Series confirmed, like from May, from April, May. And they went three series. And they were challenged. Like the World Series was like, oh shit, like we went down 1-0 and we were even at one point. but we never faced elimination that whole playoffs.
Mhm.
And the 2010 Yankees were kind of the same thing. Like they won the division, we upgraded, we got Granderson, and we were feeling the same thing, and we just got to the ALCS, and that feeling of why aren't we winning? Why doesn't this team win? Kind of stuck with me. Like I felt more shock than I think that I've ever felt. It wasn't crazy to think that the Rangers could beat us, but they were a really young team. They were nobodies for such a long time when we were kids.
Yeah.
And the Yankees were just that team. Like we were the best team. We were the best team that year. Still, the Giants won the World Series, and the Rangers were better than the Giants, and we were better than the Rangers, but the Giants won. Credit to them. But yeah, I just remember feeling shock that year.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason we lost was we just had no pitching. That starting, I mean, CC Sabathia won 21 games that year, but then what we got out of AJ Burnett for the rest of his contract after that first season was just a complete letdown. So he didn't step up. Phil Hughes was our number 3 starter, won 18 games, so he had a nice year. But then you mentioned earlier, Jake. I don't
Yeah.
remember what you said about Javier Vasquez's stats, but if you looked at this year,
Ugly.
yeah, 2010, just as ugly.
Probably because he's not a good pitcher, if I'm being honest.
They had,
Um,
they had Nick Johnson that year too.
they had a lot of dudes that questionable. So for my last one, I'm stuck between two, but I think I'm going with 2003 because this is another one from my childhood that kind of scarred me. um, I remember in the cafeteria when people were like, "Oh, what do you got?" It's either the Florida Marlins or the Yankees, and I was like, "Easy, Yankees." This is the Florida Marlins, like one of their first inaugural seasons essentially. And they had a little guy named Miguel Cabrera come up, and that put our World Series hopes to bed. So this season, or it's pretty much like along the same roster as previous years with like '04 and all that. You've got Jorge Posada like leading the way once again. Jason Giambi, fun with 41 bombs that season. Alfonso Soriano, who was one of my favorite Yankees of all time, just because I thought he was so athletic and dynamic. Him getting traded for A-Rod kind of hurt me, but obviously, like I was okay with it ultimately. Jeter, he was injured with for a lot of the games, but he still had a solid 324 average to top out that season. Hideki Matsui, Bernie Williams, of course, Raul Mondesi was in there, and Nick Johnson. They have a lot of random players that you would just not think about as Yankees. But man, like these are the teams that I grew up with, so it was still kind of in that phase where they were in between being this dynasty and then it's like, what are we turning into now? So it was like just an interesting transition to watch that happen as a young child.
I still see highlights of Josh Beckett just going the whole damn way against them in the World Series, man.
I forgot how nasty he was.
It's crazy to think that Mickey's only World Series is then, given all the chances with Detroit, like that rookie year. Like that could be Juan Soto's legacy.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that would suck.
So I don't remember 03, but after that all-time ALCS, and that kind of gave more context to why 04 was so big. But Aaron Boone, Yankees legend, on two sides of the ball now. Well, maybe not legend on the managerial side. Let's see.
Not
Hopefully,
yet. Not yet.
maybe this year.
About it.
But Aaron Boone coming off the bench, winning that extra inning, Game 7 at home, going to the World Series, and the Marlins were like, they had won recently in '97, but they were a completely different team, a really like retooled team. Was it the same attitude as like the teams going into '04? Like, was it winner of the ALCS wins the World Series and the Yankees were just shook back then? Like, what was the feeling? Can you remember?
It kind of had that same vibe, honestly. Like '04 and '03 really felt like similar to me in that sense, and it was still just like I think fans were so spoiled from the previous decade. I think that the reality of the situation started to come more towards 2006, 2007 for most fans, and then obviously we come back in 2009 and we're good again. But I feel like it was after 03, it gets very comparable to like 2014 through 2016. Like that little gray area where it was just kind of the dark ages again, and you're waiting for that next big player to pop up. So, and then I mean, hell, like lo and behold, A-Rod comes in immediately after 03. So that did happen.
The Marlins went 91 and 71 in 03, and the Yankees went 101 and 61.
They were dominant. And they had actually good pitching, but it was an older staff because you had Messina at 34 leading the way, and then David Wells, and then Roger Clemens at age 40 as well. Andy Pettit was 31, and Jeff Weaver was their youngest at 26, and he was not good that year. So
I think that was the beginning of the end too, because Steinbrenner stopped taking control as he was getting older, and then the next 5 years until they transitioned to the Hal and Hank taking more of an ownership role in 09. I think there was a lot of clutching to that big money spending on aging players, and it proved to not be good for those Yankees teams in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
All right.
Was Giambi on that? I believe Giambi was on that.
Yeah,
was that his first year?
I think it was his first year. He hit 40 homers. So, yeah.
Was he a midseason trade or from the beginning of the season?
From the beginning.
Was he signed?
Yeah, he was signed. Yeah.
He played a full 156 with them that season. Really good year, like 939 OPS, 148 OPS plus. That's prime Giambi at age 32.
He was a beast. Him and Moose not winning rings is kind of weird.
That's one thing that always sticks with me about, like I told you, Messina's my favorite pitcher, and I just wish he held out for one more season. Just one.
Just have that 7.5 ERA in 13 games starting.
Yeah,
he could have done Chien-Ming Wang.
Yeah.
Chien-Ming Wang got a ring.
That's wild.
What was Messina's tenure 01 to 08?
I believe so. Yeah.
It was right after the World's. That's the worst timing in the fucking world. Because they made it in 01 too. Like they had a strand where it was like they were on the cusp, the precipice of winning it all. 01, 03, 04.
And I think that's a solid segue, Jake, because that's my last pick, 2001. And this is another one that I don't remember. And I don't consider myself to be an overly patriotic or nationalistic person. But in terms of memories of Yankees teams that got talked about to me as a kid, this is the one that stands out. Both of my parents immigrated from Ireland. They're never into baseball. I taught them everything they know about baseball. But in terms of what sporting impact can have on a city, I think this Yankees run, even though it didn't end in a World Series, it ended in pretty heartbreaking fashion. It had the uplift of New York City post the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The Yankees team were coming, like I spoke about 2000 before, they were coming off of that era of dominance, and in September they were making the run, they were having their signature year. And it was just like a standard Yankees run. I think after 9/11 gave it all of that new meaning. They had some magic happen to them throughout the run in the postseason. Huge home runs. That's where Derek Jeter became Mr. November, because the 9/11 postponement of games for about a week and a half pushed the World Series into November, and he had that walk-off homer at midnight. They walked off twice off of what was his name for Arizona? Park was their closer, I think. I forget his name, or Kim maybe.
Kim, I think it was Kim.
It was Kim. Yeah, I know he was a Korean reliever, and he had a great season that year. And the Yankees were. It seemed like everything was supposed to go right for them. Bush threw. And I'm not a huge fan of George Bush, but he threw a perfect strike, in the first pitch. And like it was just a really uplifting moment for New Yorkers, having something to cheer about after a long period of being downtrodden, obviously, about tragic events. And they had this magic, they had this walk-off energy. They go into Game 7 against the legend of Randy Johnson and of Curt Schilling. And Soriano has that massive home run the seventh. That could have been an all-time Yankees moment, all-time Yankees homer. And of course, it came to the most dominant and consistent relief pitcher in the history of baseball, having just one moment blowing the lead for the Yankees in the bottom of the ninth in Game 7, and the Arizona Diamondbacks, the expansion team, win the World Series. But I think what that meant for, like, my family talking about that team and having something to like cheer about for the city is why I pick it here.
No, that's a great pick. I mean, how many times, we get criticized so much as Yankee fans, saying we're the worst fan base in the world. It's not often that you can say the whole world was rooting for us that year.
Yep.
That's the one year everybody would have been okay that the Pinstripes won it all. You could go back and watch the documentaries about that 01 season. It was magical, and with the attacks that happened, you just hope that New York would pull this one off for the city. And nonetheless, even though it was in a losing effort, baseball, I guess, kind of helped rejuvenate a lot of society with that series there.
Yep. I mean, I remember it vividly too because I was 7 years old. And it felt different. Like, it felt like for once the Yankees were already at the top of the world, obviously, because they had the dynasty cooking at that point. But it just felt like another level where everyone was rallying behind the city, and it was like bigger than baseball. So losing in that fashion it was rough on all cylinders. But this is a team that fully, if you look at the numbers, also deserved to win.
Yeah.
They're really good.
Yeah, credits to the Diamondbacks. I mean, Curt Schilling is probably one of the greatest postseason pitchers of all time.
Yep.
And Randy Johnson was just Randy Johnson. He tortured us in 95, and now he did it again with Arizona in 01. But yeah, that was just a very good Arizona team, man. They just played great baseball.
Yeah.
All time. It's crazy how like those were simultaneously two of the best postseason pitching performances of all time. And it's crazy how Schilling did it and Johnson both did it across different teams. Like, just really getting in the Yankees' way there.
Born in our side consistently.
Yeah.
That damn sock.
That and Chapman's grin are both fucking in my brain. Ugh.
Well, a lot of legendary moments. I know we end on some tough losses these Yankees teams have. But from when we do this or some other podcast does this in 20 years, hopefully we have a few more World Series to celebrate in this kind of draft. So to go over the teams, Jake drafted 2009 Yankees World Series team, 2004 that lost to the Red Sox, and 2003 that lost in the World Series to the Marlins. I picked 2000, the Subway Series win, 2019, and 2001, where we lost in the World Series to the Diamondbacks. Jrey picked the Baby Bombers of 2017, 2006, and the 2010 trying to repeat Yankees team. So
you guys stole all my rings, man. Didn't give me a chance.
We play for rings in the Bronx.
You snooze, you lose.
Appreciate you guys having me on, guys. I love talking Yankees baseball. I could do this all day.
Oh, we can, and we will even more. Have plenty to talk about throughout the offseason.
Definitely.
So we'll be going over some more offseason moves. Hopefully we have some big signings to talk about or some trades that'll be going down. If you're hearing this right before Christmas, before your holiday breaks, Merry Christmas to everyone listening. Have a happy holiday season. We thank you again for tuning in. Find us on Pinstripe Pulse Pod on Instagram, Pinstripe_Pulse on Twitter. Also find us on TikTok, Pinstripe Pulse Pod. I've been posting some stuff there. We're getting a few hundred views, 1,000 views occasionally here and there. So we're building it up on the TikTok. So give us a follow there. You can find Jrey, you can find Jake, you can find me and our escapades around Europe, or rather Jake's around Harlem, and me and Jrey just around the confines of New York City these days. But we thank you guys for joining us, and talk to you guys soon. Jrey, Jake, thanks so much.
Peace.